Welcome back. So this is going to be part 3 of our video. This one's going to be focused on the draft. This is my second time making it. I rambled a little bit too much last time. And so I'm going to try and really stick to the 5-minute thing. So what I would recommend for the draft stuff, so you go to here and you go to rookie draft history. I have a tab set up called draft history. So you can go to the top right in case no one noticed this. It's the year. So we're in 2041. So we'll go back and look at the 2040 draft. If you have these customized views you set up in miscellaneous, these 5 here, draft team, draft year, draft round, all that. And then, so those ones are all on the screen here. You can rearrange them just by clicking and holding and dragging. And so I have it so they're all pretty much on the left side. And then on the middle, you see all the ratings. And then you can actually set it up like this. So you can see the first overall pick last year, second overall pick by overall, or you can sort it by like pick number. So I sort it by overall and just see all like the top picks. So it's really cool. You can go back like 10 years ago if you have a long time online league and see like the draft history and which guys were successful. So I really like to use it for that. It's really neat to go back like way back in like 2024. These guys are like 15 years in the league now. And you can actually go to your split and set up time frame and hit career stats. So then you can sort by like home runs and WAR and see who are the most successful guys from each draft class. And I just find it's really helpful to learn from your mistakes, to always be humble and try to figure out why you drafted guys that were successful and the players you took that were busts, what you start to notice and about like your draft history. You can also see it up here in draft history. You go to this and then draft history and you can see your team history here. So like your first round pick, second round pick for each year. And so you can just change the teams up here and look at other teams the same way. So it's really helpful to see if you're going to trade for a team. You're like, oh, who are their like best prospects from last year's draft that are trade eligible now? And then maybe like if you're rebuilding, you trade one of your stars to them for like one of their top prospects. And so just little things like that. So the next part of the video, the main part of the video I want to show you is the overall draft stuff. You can just have everything on here that you want to look at for the draft. So my screen's a little cluttered. I'd recommend having a few less things, but what you can do is you just have all the main ratings. So I have all the pitcher and hitter stuff on the same screen. So you can see like your BABIP, power, and I, and then all your like defensive range and base running stuff. And then you can see their stats. So you can set it up. So this is just for like current year, the scope. So then you have like this guy hit 24 home runs in college, so it matches up with the 45-75 power. The second highest home runs was 21 in the college season. He has 35-60 power, so you can see some neat stuff like that. I've heard some people making videos that aren't exactly accurate. I actually saw one that was saying to totally go by ratings and not look at stats at all. But that isn't necessarily true because stats and the ratings changes come before the updated scouting reports. So if a guy gets like a lot more power, he's going to hit a bunch of home runs in like a 2-month period. If he has like a crazy TCR, right? Like he goes from, say, a draft prospect, like a young guy in rookie ball, he has 35-70 power. Sorry, 35-45 power. It's like, oh, he's probably not really a big power hitter, maybe hit like 2 or 3 home runs a year. But all of a sudden you see a guy with like 35-55 power and he hits like 18 home runs in 60 games in rookie ball. And you're like, that seems too much. But then what you realize is you go to your scouting report and you request a scouting report, and then you get the report 2 months later, and you realize that he all of a sudden jumps and has like a crazy power jump in the ratings to like 50-70. And what you realize from that is the power and the performance actually comes before, and the scout, it's like real life. Like you don't notice it until you see it in action. So the actual change always happens before the ratings change. Like obviously there's a thing where they could change and then you get a scouting report like the next day, but you know what I mean by that. A lot of times you'll have reports on certain guys, they'll be like 5 months old. So you can actually see trends. If you're a really in-depth player and pay attention, you see them in the stats before you see them in the ratings. So sometimes you'll see a guy on this list and he'll like be like top 3 in the class in home run power, and almost all these guys will have really high like 40 ratings. And if you ever see a guy on this list that has like 17 home runs but he shows like 25 power, odds are that he just hasn't had like an updated scouting report. So you can actually see some important stuff by stats, and it's not always about the ratings. So I would say I would definitely go by ratings for the most part, but I'd like to have the stats on there for little stuff like that. You can see the trends a little bit before they happen sometimes, which is neat. So I have all that stuff on there. And then what I would, the main part of this video I think is a really good tip and trick is the scouting date. So what I would say is, go by the scouting accuracy. You can see in the new game, it'll be blue if it's very high. Sometimes it'll say very high, but if you actually click and look at the guy, the last report for this guy example is really high. It was from 8 days ago. But what you'll see is sometimes it'll still show very high, but you haven't got the most accurate recent report. wasn't since like 4 months ago. It'll say like December 28th. It'll still show very high because I think this is like a formula the game sets up where it's like, oh, he's had like 8 scouting reports in the last 16 months, so we're going to show very high. But what you'll get is you'll show a guy at very high, even though you haven't got a report in like 5 months. And so in 5 months, a lot of changes can happen, especially at the development ages from like 18 to 23. So what I would recommend is I would actually set up the screen that shows last scouting date in my view. So all I put is these categories: tag controls, position, name, scout date, and scout. Actually, they're in the last screen here. Or sorry, they're in miscellaneous here, right here. And so what you can do is you can actually sort it by the date. So for this draft class, almost everyone in the class, I have a lot of money in scouting. Everybody except for these guys shows pretty much very high. So actually what I'll do is I'll scout those guys. I'll show you in a second. So what you can do is you scout the whole class and you see that's a perfect example. So this guy was scouted on February 15th and he's only showing average. But if you sort it, I have guys showing very high that haven't been scouted since the 4th. The reason is these guys don't have a very long history. This guy hasn't had like 4 reports over the last few years because he just got generated in the game like this year. But if you look at the guys that are still showing very high from like February, it's because they have all these reports from like last year's report, 2039, 2040, 2041. So what you want to do is you want to find the guys with the most outdated reports. And then, so for the example, this one is all the February 4th guys. So I'm going to right click there and then hit add filter. And then I'm going to change it to February 4th. And I'm going to show 81 guys here that all haven't been scouted since February 4th, which is almost 2 full months now. That's pretty recent because I have a lot of money in scouting, but you might show guys on that list that are like haven't been scouted in 6 months. So you can manually scout them. You go to tag controls, highlight everybody, right click, hit request scouting report, and add all 80 of those guys. I think you only generally want to add like 60 guys to that list, so I would actually have to do it twice within like a week. So you just want to take about 20 guys off. I'll show you that little tip and trick too. You want to get this list down to about 59, I think is the numbers, like the max you want to have. So you do that, for example, hit request scouting report, those 55 guys. And then you're going to go to the scouting screen and task list and see how my guy's too busy. It's showing yellow. You want that to be green. So if you get rid of a few of these guys, there's too many guys. So you want to make it so it's green. So I had to delete a bunch of guys. So you want to get under 60, or else if it's yellow, it'll say that they're busy and you might miss out on some stuff. So you want to add about 58 guys to that screen at a time. And then you wait about a week or 2 weeks, 2 weeks for these guys, and then you just do it again. So you keep manually doing that, or you just have a bunch of money in scouting. For my scouting, I have 4.4 million in amateur scouting. Some guys have like 24 million in the total scouting budget, so they'll put like 30% in amateur, and it's like 8 million. So 4 million's plenty. I've had as low as 2 million, and almost everyone in the classes still has pretty accurate reports. As long as they're like high, you just don't want guys with like low and average. So you just want to make sure you're updating that list pretty thoroughly. And that'll make a big difference because sometimes, like I said, if you're going drafting blindly from guys that you haven't scouted in 7 months, they could have had major changes in their ratings and you don't know about them. So that's something to keep an eye on right for the draft. Like months leading up to the draft, I would go and I would manually scout all the most outdated reports. So anyways, that's it for this episode. I probably went a little long again, but my bad.